what happened was, this is page 12B. This is what I did tonight in the last couple hours. This is what I did this morning, which looks much neater. This is 6 a.m. this morning. Right now it's 10:10 p.m. This is what I completed about an hour and 10 minutes ago. So you can see I've already been drinking, but still that's pretty good. And I also got what I was looking for, and because I was drunk a little bit, just a little bit, I wrote yes. I have 1 beer and 1 glass of wine per night. It just so happens it's a very big glass of beer and a very big glass of wine. But what's awesome, so this is my page 12, but it's actually like my page like 16 or 17. Let's see if I can, yeah, because I have 1, 2, 3, 4. I have 4 pages from over the last week that, well, what happened was on the, page 14, which was 7/23. What's today? 7/25. Actually, that's not bad. 2 days ago, I came up with something which was close, but no cigar. So I went back to the last thing I knew what was right, and I threw everything else out. Because, so that must mean page 10. Yeah. Page 10 was 7/17. A few days after Trump got shot. And this was the last thing that was correct. Correct how? Well, what happened? See, everything, so this is my 12 pages. Plus my 4, so my 16 pages. Plus, actually, I also had, I started back last month with this book, but I came up to a problem at about the same spot. And I believe it's just an arithmetic problem. I think I had 1 arithmetic problem in this book, and I think I had 1 arithmetic problem in those other pages I discarded. Arithmetic, multiplicative, division, addition and subtraction. Just like, once you start getting into numbers like 24,186 or whatever, like, it starts to get funky, but you have to be able to break everything down into prime numbers, and that simplifies things. If you can account for every single prime number to a power added, so you have 2 to a power, plus 3 to a power, plus 5 to a power, plus 7 to a power. That's the origin of accounting. But before you get a few pages into it, you're at 7-digit numbers. And they have to add up perfectly. And they look weird, but that's only because we're calculating in base 10. And as it so happens, geometrically, base 10 is a very narrow field. And what's worse is, over the last, let's say, 150 years, as effective as engineering has been in decimal units or in standard units, see, that's the thing too, is because both metric and standard are decimal. except for below the unit 1, where metric systems are still base 10, but in the standard system, once we go below 1, we go into halves, thirds, quarters, eighths, sixteenths, 30-seconds, you know. And once again, we're dealing with, well, primarily root 2, halves, root 3, thirds. But anyway, yeah, when did I start this book? Amplituhedroplex. June 25th. June 25th, 2024. You can see I didn't get very far. In this book because, well, there's a few pages of math after that. But it's all the same things that are up in these other pages, except these pages are better. I failed twice at the same place with the same math, but I know the math is right, or at least I intuit the math is correct. And all of it just has to do with explaining this object. So, yeah. I accidentally built this object several years ago, and the whole point of these 16, 20 pages of math, which I've enumerated as 12 pages, which is really like 24 pages, plus all the years, plus the previous videos I've posted concerning this. All I'm trying to do is prove that, because I have an intuition to it, I have an intuition for it, which is based on this object which I built accidentally. It's like I accidentally built this thing and I was like, wait, what? And then one day, I put it down on the surface and it sat perfect. And I was like, what? I think that's pretty awesome. But now I have to prove it. And that's the crazy thing about this thing, is that I'm doing this work because I think this is perfection. Mathematically. Expressed in the flesh. Fleshed out. A thing. It exists. Like, here's the deal. I'm explaining this object, which is not Cartesian, but it is, because it can be described Cartesianally. The way I know it can be described Cartesianally, so this is going to take a minute. No. Here's my first page. This triangle right here is this triangle, this red triangle. Sorry, trying to get a good angle on it. This red triangle right here, this exact object right here, is this triangle right here. So I define that, and everything else just is built off of it. In the same way that I built this. Like, I just came up with a pattern connecting tetrahedron, and the thing built itself. When I started building it, I actually thought it would start in a spot. I thought it would spiral, because I didn't know. I was just intuiting it, and I was like, I think this is going to make a spiral. What I didn't know is that it would build a perfect half ring, or at least so it seems, and then a perfect ring. I have videos on all of it. And then eventually, this is a logical outcome. I didn't have to do anything. It built itself. And the same thing with the math. Like, I've spent the last 5 years, 3 years, 2 years, 1 year trying to figure out how do I define this triangle. As it so happens, it doesn't really matter. It matters practically, but the thing is, once you define those ratios, they can all be transferred perfectly. Like, even though there's a discrepancy between whole numbers and roots, whatever power of a root, here we're specifically dealing with square roots, and we're specifically dealing with, well, we're dealing with root 2 and root 3, but the way in which we're dealing, see, root 3 is everywhere. Well, I shouldn't say that. All my x coordinates are powers of 1 and roots of 1. All my y coordinates are roots of 3, and all my z coordinates are roots of 6, which is root 2 times root 3. So really what we're dealing with is root 1, root 2, root 3. I made a video about the harmonics of root 1, root 2, root 3 years ago. Just saying, I've been on it, and it's all wrapped up in this shape, and I didn't know it then. That's God's perfection, motherfucker. But anyway, what I wanted to say is that this, I want to get to my page 12 again. It's not my favorite page, but it's the one I'm working on today. God damn it, where is it? 11B. Yeah, I do like 11B. 11B and 12B. This morning and this evening. This is such a great side by side. My morning numbers, nice and neat, so far as I go. Sloppy for a lot of y'all. And then my evening numbers, sloppy as shit, even though it's very orderly for a lot of y'all. Just saying. But anyway, what's really interesting about this is that I'm talking about the distance between L and E. And on this object, E, let's see, E, this is so great. Yeah, so sitting like this, E is this point right here. That's E. L, all right. If you see this, all right. E is this point right here. Now, if I turn that around, if you see this white and this blue, they both meet at E. L, alright, so this little point where all these tetrahedra come together, that's E. If you see this red and purple triangle, or these tetrahedra, the center point that goes from from this vertex of the tetrahedron to this vertex of the other tetrahedron, the center point in the triangle where they meet, that's L. And so there's the distance between this point and the distance between the point inside of here. So if you look at this index finger and this index finger, kind of, sort of, that's what this page is talking about perfectly. Like, I'm trying to prove that this and this exist on the same plane. I don't care what plane, any plane, it doesn't matter, so long as it's a Euclidean plane. That's what I'm up to. I'm on page 12. It's gonna take 100 pages of shit that looks like this. It's gonna suck. It sucked so far. I've been slogging on it for a month. And I'm this far into it. And I have this far to go. And what's happened since I started at this point, which is 0, 0, 0, 0, and I've gotten to this point, which is described on this page. What's happened since then? Attempted president assassination. I almost lost my job. The current president resigned. And those are the only things I can talk about. Never mind what I can't talk about. Why can't I talk about them? For the same reasons you can't talk about the shit you can't talk about. If you're 47 years old. Different things for different people. But anyway, I love that. I love that I can play with this awesome, beautiful object. This mathematical, this thing arguably is definitely a mathematical truth. The only thing, this thing is a mathematical truth, which is beautiful in and of itself, however the numbers work out. But if it works out that if all my z's are 0 on this triangle of a tetrahedron, if all my z's are 0 on this side, and no matter how the numbers work out, and remember, I'm looking at something here. This is really important. It doesn't matter how big the numbers get. 26,244 over 78,732. At first I thought, when I first saw that number, I was like, no, I'm wrong. That's crazy. That's whack. But then I did the calculation, and it turns out 26,244 over 78,732 equals 1 over 3, which equaled my d squared. I take the square root, I do a little bit of denominator rationalization, and the whole thing works out to root 3 over 3, which is the exact number I was looking for, which means I'm on track, motherfucker. Anyway, once I get to this purple side, if these 3 numbers work out on my z's to be 0, 0, 0, I don't care what my x's are. I don't care what my y's are. I do in the end of things. But I'm not looking for the end of things. I'm just looking for the end of this thing. And the end of this thing is getting to three points of an equilateral triangle who have XYZ components whose Z components all equal 0. If that happens, motherfucker, nothing's gonna stop us. Why? Because this isn't a algorithm. It's an absolutely perfectly geometrically, it's not a formulaic, algorithmic, it's not a machine process. It's simply what is. It's difficult to come to, but I'm telling you, building something out of only tetrahedra that is perfect, it's a thing. Yeah. It's a thing. It's the thing. Geometric perfection cannot be wavered by God. God cannot defy geometric perfection. People don't understand that. People always say God can do this, God can do that. But there are things God cannot do. God cannot violate geometric perfection. God can influence the expression of geometric perfection. And there are times when we think we see God violating geometric perfection when we don't realize that we don't have the geometries correctly situated, because we don't, the geometries of reality have more, like a three-dimensional Euclidean Cartesian space, as it is commonly thought of, doesn't really deal with like atmospheric pressure. So if you're dealing with an XYZ grid, just dealing with tetrahedra, it's like, well, where does barometric pressure come into that? Even though that's also, because like even like a swinging pendulum can be described using like Pythagorean rectangles around a triangle to like anyway, it's really interesting that like one little itty bitty line about this big situated like inside this object is what I was interested in this evening. I think that's kind of interesting. It's weird. Anyway, or crazy, but it's not crazy. How do I know it's not crazy? Because all these numbers added up to root 3/3, just like I wanted them to, because that means that the work I did before it is true. This work I did today wasn't to figure out anything. This page and the page I did before it that I showed before, those were pages I did just to prove that the work I did before it was true. I think that's good work. It's like I did the thing, I did the calculations, I did the work, I got the numbers, but wait, I'm gonna check the numbers. That's what I did this morning. And even though I wanted to move on, when I got home tonight, the thing I said to myself was, wait, I'm gonna check the numbers again. I'm gonna make goddamn absolutely 100, 1,000, 1,000,000% positive we're gonna get them fucking numbers nailed down. Because there's no program, there's no spreadsheet. There's no way to check, there's no reference book for what I'm trying to prove. Nobody's proved this, to my knowledge. Maybe someone has, probably in an underground bunker beneath the, the railroad beneath the underground. That's what we're working on. Perfection. Because nobody's working on perfection. There's a lot of people working on perfection, but not out in the open, you know. Anyway, sorry for being so prideful. Truth. Find truth.